A lot of sense to me.
It does, yeah. Well, it is about going back to that play. It's connected to that, and I don't know if there's a theory to it. I mean, I've been reading about Hegel via Slavoj Žižek, and I've been influenced a lot by Daoism, and these are philosophies that try to resolve such tensions, try to resolve what appear to be binaries or polarities, and try to kind of resolve them in some third dimension, which is like a very poor, low resolution way of explaining it. And the idea, I think it's referred to as Wu Wei in the Taoist tradition, where, like, I'm quoting a woman who was on a podcast who is an expert, and I hope I'm not butchering it, but she talks about, if you want to surf, if you go with the waves, that's not going to work. If you go against the waves, that's not going to work either. There's some sort of, the word balance is not sufficient. There is just this interplay between going against and going with. And it's like living in that tension, living in the tension of having one foot in tradition and one foot in progress, one foot in myself, one foot in the community. Those things are always at tension, but of course they're not at tension because they're really just the same thing. And it's a fractal pattern all the way down. It's individual community, individual community, individual community, individual community, all the way down. And it's tradition and progress and tradition and progress and tradition and progress and all the way down. And any of these polarities, it's not about picking one or the other. Although in a particular instance, you might pick one or the other. But the large scale thing is that it's this balance all the way down, and we have to just learn to ride that wave.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I mean, I think about like the desire to want to be, it's like boredom. Like there's no contentment, right? Like you're either bored or you're anxious about what you need to be doing.
Correct.
It's like, how do you stay content when you're either bored or you want to be doing? Like, I'm not doing this yet. I don't want to be doing this anymore. Like, I don't know.
Well, it is truly having like, if you're too anxious, then you need to have an appropriate amount of boredom. And if you're too bored, then you need an appropriate amount of stuff to do. Like it is that simple. And if you're feeling one rather than the other, and you think you have both, then simply switch to the other thing and go back. Like, I remember when I started to take online courses and I was trying to learn how to code. And I found that doing online courses and like listening to the lectures and doing the assignments was a wonderful break from music production. And then when I got sick of coding, music production was a wonderful break from coding and taking online courses. And similarly, voiceover work is just annoying enough, but doesn't tap into any of my creative things that I do in music, such that I do it and I have to do it. And the fact that I have to do it almost makes me appreciate when I'm working on music more.
Right. We talked about this. How
we have a choice. We have a choice to frame things this way. Like everything is a mental construct, and we have the choice to look at life this way. I will give you a different example. In India, if you decide to move to India and you want to get a phone number, then you will get an inordinately high amount of spam text messages, SMS messages in a day. It's an extremely high number, more than you've ever can fathom in your life. I don't know what the situation in Israel is, but I'm sure it must be much less than the amount of spam text messages, SMS you get in a day. It's just insane. And if you're the kind of person that likes to have your unread messages, that big red number on your icon, if you like to just cancel that out and for it to be zero all the time, you will find that on a day-to-day basis, you are just, tapping on this app and just hitting that message so it gets read, so that number will go away, and that big red icon on top of the icon, superimposed on top of the messages app or whatever, it will go away, right? Now, this is extremely frustrating, especially if you're coming from a place where you get significantly less spam messages in a day and you actually want to utilize your SMS for communications. So the only way that I was able to cope with this was to simply make it into a game and to see how high I could get as a number on my unread messages, because in India we just use WhatsApp. We don't use SMS because of this very reason. And so
Same here, by the way.
Yeah.
In Israel, I assume an SMS is spam unless it's like from the bank or the supermarket.
Same situation. And if you can see,
it's not as bad. Not as bad.
The number, I don't know if you can see the number on here.
I could almost see the number. 8,000?
8,172. So it's a game. It's a game. Now, why did I tell that stupid story? It's because it's a change of framework. Like, you take something frustrating, nothing has changed about the material circumstances of the situation. All has changed is my framework for dealing with it. And now it's like, doesn't bother me. But it would bother me if I really cared about getting that thing down to zero.
Right. Inbox zero is such a horrible concept. I think it's destroying people for nothing.
Yeah.
My personal inbox, I just don't think I'm ever going to be able to get it down to zero. I get too many promotional emails. I can't keep up. I can't get down to zero.
Well, that's
to begin with.
The
and then I'll have a
email.
crazy month, and I won't even get to it, and then it'll build up again.
Yeah,
it's impossible.
I've only just now like tried to start utilizing a second email address for this very reason, and it's just it's a hot mess.
Yeah, it's crazy. My work email is thankfully still pretty. I'm pretty on top of it, but my personal email is a total junkyard.
Yeah.
Wait, so I do want to go back to asking you a little bit about music, because I'm loving this stuff. Obviously the philosophical questions and all this stuff. But
we'll do a bi-yearly catch up where, like, 6 months from now I'll have you back on my show, and then we'll just keep doing this ad infinitum. It'll be a fun it'll be a fun gimmick. That's how we'll do it.
I'm loving having repeat guests on my show. It's a completely different conversation.
Yeah, of course.
Every time. I didn't show up with a single question. I was like, whatever Arnob's going to say, it's going to be good. I don't have to ask him. Like, I don't have to have anything prepared in advance.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, but so right now you're not really working on any productions other than your own. You're working on your chops.
Yep.
You're making your own production. Is it simply a logistical thing, or like if something came in now, would you do it in Toronto? Would you, or are you just like waiting for a specific thing to kind of tick off to kind of get back to doing work for other artists?
So there's a bunch of complicated things. So I'm finding myself in this weird space as a producer where I've done enough work that is fairly competent, such that I don't necessarily not only do I not necessarily want to, like, maybe that's not even it, to chase down artists to work with, but it like sort of doesn't make sense. Like, it almost kills the vibe. Like the last several projects that I've received, like that last several albums, were all instances where ostensibly, I don't know what the word ostensibly means. I shouldn't use it. One way or another, the artist approached me, right? And
I think you had the word right, though, but it's cool.
Just trying my best out here. But
yeah, totally.
But one way or another, the artist approached me, and it was like, it's sort of at a point now where again, it's not I don't want it to come off as an ego thing, but like the whole, especially if it's an album, right? Like if you're and I've only really done albums. Like any singles that have come out, if you go to my webpage and see where it says singles, they're just all singles from the albums that I've produced. You know what I mean? So in that
wow, that's really wild, by the way, especially in an era where nobody's making records, like everybody's making singles.
It's probably why I'm speaking to you from my closet, honestly. But it's, because it's a lot of work, takes a long time, and you're not you got to wait like to finish the day. There's lots of reasons. But anyway, I've been doing albums, and as a long game move, doing albums is a good thing because it really shows a different level of chops, right? So I've done that. Now I've done them in a bunch of genres too. So it's like not necessarily like I unless somebody's coming to me with like a really interesting thrash metal project or like a folk, like a proper like obscure type of folk music, like some really new territory. I don't know if I should just be too what's the word? Excited to take on a new album project. Like I want to now wait to really, if I'm going to dedicate that amount of time, because it's a thankless thing. Like I had Brad Kilpatrick, amazing session drummer, just generally percussionist and producer on the last episode of my podcast. And he was talking about, like he's produced a few albums, and it is just like, it's a draining task. It's like, and for me, it's a very emotionally draining too, because I just can't do this without forming like a deep interpersonal relationship with who I'm working with. And you're in this role where you're kind of like this sensei character. And so it gets weird. Like, it doesn't make sense for me to be flagging down artists and be like, hey, we got to do this. Like, I'm too old for that stuff anyway. But also, it's not as if I'm like so successful that like I'm on people's like radar and it's like, oh, we want to work with this guy. And it's not like there's a big lineup outside to like get me to work on someone's record. So I'm in a situation where I'm almost maybe even contemplating finding some type of an agent or something in this regard. That's one piece of it where like I myself am in this weird echelon now where it does like it doesn't make sense for me to chase people, but it also like it's not like as if people and rightly so, to be clear, it makes sense that also not necessarily people are banging down my door, although I have had some offers, but I'm just being a bit pickier. That's one thing. Another thing is simply the idea that I have done lots of albums, not lots, but a bunch. So I should do more singles. So I'm like sort of recalibrating and seeing like, okay, let's do some more singles. I am working on one single right now for a pop singer. But that's like, let's do that for a while unless like a really interesting album comes along.
Right.
And
I don't see a harm in you doing some singles. I feel like
that time is now.
Yeah.
Like let's if like now is because I've done so many different types of music, so I feel pretty confident that I can make like a variety of different types of like I work with a variety of different types of artists. So I'm trying to be more open to that and sort of see what happens. The moving around like this year has not helped in sort of flagging down any permanent projects. Although
it does sound like you're taking a breather after Corona, Mali, like just like you've been through a lot, and it's just like okay, you're taking some me time to kind of
Well, and the so like the other end of it is like the only reason that I'm able to do these like intensive projects is through side hustles, right? Like, and the only reason that I get interesting projects or the projects that I will like to do in the future, like these future projects are probably not going to be able to pay me a lot either. Like if I'm really interested in making like an obscure album for like an Indian classical musician where it's just that, like true to form, like we're just going to record it really well or anything. I'm not always going to be guaranteed to get like a huge amount of money on these types of projects. So I'm also thinking about like what are the other types of side hustles that I can do to supplement and also augment what I do. Like if I'm producing solo material, like learning things like graphic design and animation help, learning things like generative art and coding and bringing that into to the visual stuff helps. Certainly learning how to code helped my music production. It helped inform a lot of the synthesis stuff that I do. Like math is always going on as a part of my music production process. So, I've been thinking about getting back into math. All these things kind of connect. And then the solo material. Like I've only ever released a beat tape under my kind of solo moniker. And so it's like, well, let's put, I got so much stuff. I got tons of stuff. So like, let's consolidate. Let's, shine it up as much as we want to, as much as we want to, and then get it out there.
Yeah. Love it. I feel like you're so true to the art, I feel
too
like
much. So to my detriment.
So many people are like, I guess there's a spectrum, right? Yeah. Like there's like a spectrum of like, I'm all business, I'm all art, and like somewhere in the middle, most people fall. Like
I respect the people that are all about the business a lot, and I expect that I have a lot to learn from those kind of cats. And I got tremendous respect, but that doesn't change the fact that I think that the business model in the music industry is non-existent. Like it's not a business model. There's no business model. And instead I just choose to view it as a paradigm shift. And that's just it. Like I'm what can I say? I think it's important just at a day-to-day level that I get compensated for the type of work I do, depending on what it is, right? Whether I'm mixing something or producing something for somebody, I still need to have that bucket of I'm just messing around with my friends. Like one of my friends who's a collaborator comes over and we just make some weird shit for fun. Like that still has to exist without the headache of like financial,
Yeah, there's something great about that. Like I feel like I have a friend here who's a drummer in the band that I'm sort of a part of, and like we're so different but we're also very similar, but we have like overlapping, like our strengths are like the opposites of each other. Like he's fiery and goes with, and like he'll just follow his intuition and whatever he's inspired by, and I'm like organized and I do the hard work and I sit down and I labor, and he's just like, oh, here's inspiration, bam.